There are approximately 16 million single-family rental homes in America, generating nearly 400 billion in annual rent. While most investors focus on acquiring those properties, today's guest built the largest property management franchise in the country by helping investors maximize the value of the properties they already own. In this episode, you'll discover why property management has become one of the most scalable and recurring revenue businesses in real estate, and how entrepreneurs are building substantial companies without owning the underlying assets. Tired of corporate America, but unsure where to start with franchising? Welcome to The Pursuit of Profit, brought to you by Frenocity, a podcast for high-income professionals exploring franchising. This podcast will help you narrow down your options and connect with a franchise that is personally matched to your goals and lifestyle so you can build real wealth through ownership. Today, I'm joined by Steve Hart, co-founder and chief executive officer of Property Management, Inc., better known as PMI. Since launching the company, Steve and his team have grown PMI to more than 450 locations, serving residential, commercial, association, multifamily, and short-term rental property owners. In this episode, you'll discover why property management may be a more scalable business than owning rental properties, how recurring revenue, acquisitions, and multiple service lines create long-term enterprise value, and how PMI is positioning itself to become the world's premier property management company. All right, let's get into it. Here's how I want to begin this. When I think about real estate, most investors think that the path to wealth in real estate is owning the real estate, owning more properties, right? You've built a business around managing properties instead. So my question for you at your level is, why is managing real estate a better business, let's say, than owning it?
Amazing question. I love that you kicked it off like that. You know, most real estate investors think exactly that. They think, hey, how many properties can I acquire? And they don't think about property management until it becomes a problem. And it happens to every one of them. The number one thing I hear from investors and friends that are renting properties is, I wish I could find a good property manager.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy because we're talking about an industry that's a $150 billion industry, the property management industry. And here people are trying to find a professional to be able to take care of them. So your question is right on. Property management is an industry that's been overlooked for years. And I'll talk about this industry on this podcast. I'm excited to share with the listeners, what we're doing to change this lack of professionalism.
So it's a massive industry, and you're saying that the industry is really filled with, as I would call them, a bunch of hacks. They don't answer the phone. They don't do what they say they're going to do. Hey, they don't show up. They don't find tenants. They don't evict the bad ones.
Hey, you're going right at the meat and the start of this podcast. So, hey, let's talk about this industry because it's, like I said, $150 billion industry, 250,000 property managers. Some people say upwards of 350,000, but 250,000 property managers, and only 25% of those are really scaled, larger property managers. 75% of that whole industry is small mom and pop shops, 1 and 2 man shows. And people love to say about the property management industry, it's just so fragmented. You just got all these little small mom and pops, no national brands, no real set processes and systems. I love to say it's just under professionalized,
Really?
Limited systems, weak processes, and poor owner experiences that these investors are experiencing. And it's this combination of a massive industry and being so fragmented and under-professionalized that's created this environment for companies like PMI to really thrive.
Interesting.
And it's real and it's happening.
So when I started becoming a guest on other shows, I chose these real estate shows because realtors were getting their head handed to them, right? I'm talking about the last, couple of years. And the mortgage industry was really getting their head handed to them. So I would go on there and I would say things like, you know what, I think that real estate is an exceptional wealth preservation vehicle. And it would just piss them off. Like they just hate that statement that it's a wealth preservation vehicle. And I'm like, I truly believe that. I don't know that it's the greatest wealth creation vehicle. And like, how could you say that? Now, these are real estate people, like they bleed, right? Real estate. I go, look, a rental property might appreciate from $500,000 to $1 million over a normal cycle of 20 years, right? Not these crazy cycles that we've been in, but a normal a home keeping up and hedging inflation. $500,000, right? Okay, you're nodding your head. $500,000 to $1 million.
It's proven. Real estate typically is a great place to invest your money. Most investors know that. That's why so many do that.
So true. And then I would say to them, but if I got into a business like PMI and I'm generating $500,000 of EBITDA, or any franchise generating over time, over that 20-year period, and I'm selling that thing for a 5-time multiple, like, come on. I would way rather be an entrepreneur as a wealth creation strategy.
Our franchise operators, we have people waiting for our franchise operators to sell their business, because a lot of people don't want to buy a mom and pop shop because it comes with no systems. And how does that buyer know what's going to happen to that business that's all just buddy this and that? And, it's a risky investment. Whereas you buy a PMI franchise with a book of business attached, you're getting processes, systems, accounting. You're getting a community of other professionals and a corporate office that's going to lock you right into a training, system and make sure you don't skip a beat.
That's part of your model. Your model is, look, I guess any model can say this. How do you grow? We grow organically. We grow through acquisition. Now, any system can say that. You actually did it. Most brands don't grow through acquisition. And if you could get granular, as granular as you're willing to get, I would love to understand the quintessential acquisition target. You just said it. Nobody wants the mom and pop. They have no systems. But my argument to you would be, but don't I just want their doors? Because I'm already with you. So I'm with PMI. I already have the systems. I just want your doors.
It's hard to grow a property management business organically. Think about it. You're doing the advertising, the marketing, the social media posts, all the things that other businesses are doing, or at least professional, larger property managers are doing. You're fighting for that, that investor looking to find a good property management company. It's a slow, organic growth. And a property manager doesn't really start making money until that portfolio of properties is decent size. You got to be at least over 50 to 100 doors in your portfolio to even cover your costs and, start making any decent kind of money. And that's what's happened in this industry full of all these small mom and pops. You got all these guys, a lot of them are realtors that just aren't quite making it. So they tell their investors, hey, I'll manage your property, because they don't want to lose those investors, send in a business. So you got all these people that are kind of part-time property managers, are trying to do it, lack of systems, and they just are stuck in that 50 doors, 75 door range. They're not really making a ton of money. They aren't encouraged to scale because they're part-time, or they are so busy because they don't have those systems. They're afraid to scale their business bigger. And we call it being stuck in transition. And so the number one way we encourage our franchise partners to grow is what you just talked about. We do acquisitions. We convert these small mom and pops that are struggling. They look over at our franchisees and go, whoa, that guy just bought a franchise, property management franchise, and he has more stuff, more professional branding and marketing and all these systems and tools to help him grow than I have. And I've been doing property management for 15 years. Yeah. And they'll approach us and join PMI as a conversion. So we get a lot of these existing property managers, these small to mid-size, we even get some big guys in that just want to be part of a national brand, not creating the wheel anymore, not trying to keep up with tech, which, by the way, Clive, let's talk about tech later, because it's changing the game in the way property management is being done. And these mom and pops, they can't keep up on the AI and all these changes. And so they want to join in. And so we do a lot of conversions. But acquisitions is the number one way our franchisees are really scaling quickly. Because remember, these 250,000 property managers that are all small mom and pops, our franchise partners go to them, say, hey, I'll pay you really good money for your business. And they bring that book of business into their PMI business. Remember, these small mom and pops, they're have limited systems. They have limited revenue streams. The average property manager is only really tapping into a management fee, maybe a lease up commission, and maybe some late fees or something like that. Our franchise partners access over 50, not 15, 50 different revenue earning opportunities. And these aren't tick-tacky fees that they're charging. These are real programs for the investor, the owner of the property, to opt into. He wants to make sure that properties get inspected, or maybe he wants the filters or for their HVAC unit changed out quarterly because he knows the tenants aren't going to do it.
That's right.
And so we can put these investment property owners on programs where the property manager makes money, they save money, and we have programs for the tenants, resident benefit packages and these things that these smaller mom and pops just can't really roll out and scale. And so going back to that acquisition model, we help our franchise partner acquire that mom and pop down the street. And then they roll those properties into our revenue, our profit system, and talking about a great investment where you can buy these businesses very economically and scale it quickly. And so that's the number one way we encourage our franchise partners to grow, is through these acquisitions. And we do over 40 to 50 of these acquisitions per year. We love to say we're the largest buyer of property management companies in the country, just based on what we're doing. And we're not buying them. PMI Corporate is not buying these businesses.
Right.
These are our franchise partners that own and operate that business. They own it. They get all the upside. And we're helping them acquire those acquisitions, helping them scale. They get all the benefit from that.
Pursuit of Profit is brought to you by Fernocity. If franchise ownership is on your radar, whether you're buying your first unit or expanding your portfolio, the most important step is getting clarity before you invest. At Fernocity, we provide free franchise consulting to help you identify the right opportunity based on your goals, lifestyle, financial position, income needs, your risk tolerance, and long-term vision or legacy. We work with you to develop investment objectives and build a strategy designed specifically for you. There's no cost, just expert guidance. We're compensated by the seller, just like a realtor. Visit Fernocity.com to book your free consultation call. Thank you. Are you comfortable getting a little more granular? Meaning, I don't have an interest, Cliff, we have a target list. The franchisees are instructed, this is the deal you're looking for. You're looking for a minimum number of doors. You're looking for the economics. For example, mom and pop shops have a habit of grossly undercharging for their services because they don't believe in their own price, because they don't add any value. It's like, do you have an interest in 7% of rent roll? Or are you passing on that? Like, give me, like I said, like, if you can, I know there's some, Steve, I respect your secret sauce. And it's like, Cliff, I don't want to come out here and tell people, I get it. But tell me as much as you could tell me specifically about, this is as I said, a quintessential deal. 50 to 100 doors, charging 10 to 14% a month on rent roll. Boom, boom, boom. What does it look like?
Hey, you nailed it. The average property manager charging 7 to 8%. They think that they have to lower their management fee in order to get new doors because they don't really provide that much value to these investment properties owners. And it turns into a game, of who can get the lowest fee out there. And what we coach our franchise operators is, we don't even call ourselves property managers, believe it or not. Even though our name is Property Management Inc. or PMI, we like to refer ourselves as asset managers. We're really providing value to these property owners and these investors, where, they're really able to feel the difference. An asset manager is focused on growing the NOI of the business, protecting the asset's value. They have strategic rent increases. A property manager just, that doesn't know these kind of things isn't going to know that, hey, the market increases 3% every year. We need to make sure the rents are appropriate. We also reduce turnover because we're providing a better experience for that tenant as an asset manager, lower turnover, and all these things really add up, makes that property of more value. It makes it easier for these investment property owners to buy investment properties because they don't have the burden of, oh, geez, that property sat empty for 5 months now. And how am I going to make the mortgage payment, on that investment property? When you've got a good asset manager that has all the tools to really make sure that that property is being managed properly, we know ahead of time, we prepare ahead of time. When that tenant is moving out, we're already planning a turnaround, starting to market it in advance, for example, and make sure that day that tenant moves out, we've got cleaning crews and all that stuff, rotating that property so it is ready to rent, real quick. That's the difference between a property manager and an asset manager with things like that. Long-term capital planning, helping investors just make better decisions.
I read that you were managing 50 billion in assets. Is that accurate today?
I'm afraid your information is quite off. We're closer to 100 billion in assets under management. We manage several 100,000 properties. One thing that makes our franchise opportunity unique, because there's several property management franchises that are out there. We have built a property management platform which allows our franchise operators. Most of them start with residential property management, mainly because it's kind of the lowest hanging fruit. It's the biggest, the largest market, and it's easy to tap into that sector. But we've built the ability for our franchise partners to do not just residential property management, but they can do commercial, they can do HOA property management. Yeah, those HOAs that most of your listeners are participating at in their communities, they all have management, or they should have professional property management. It's our fastest growing pillar. We call them pillars that is growing in our franchises is HOA management. So yeah, our franchisees do HOA, commercial, residential, multifamily, which is your bigger high-rise, condominium complex, apartment communities, things like that. They have property management. And lastly, what's really sprung up in the last 10 years is the short-term rental. Those Airbnbs, right? Professional managers doing that. And so through the purchase of one franchise and PMI, our franchise partners can expand to one or any of these 5 different pillars. And most of our operators we see operating typically in at least 2 or 3 after they, get that first one off the ground. They're very quick to jump into a second or eventually a third or fourth pillar.
Okay, got it. Go back to the retention. It's the name of the game. The entire industry runs on retention. You're missing a tenant for 2, 3, 4 months. My year is shot. I'm not a large investor. I have 5 properties.
You're a perfect example of a real estate investor, and you just nailed it. If your property's not performing, you can't get a decent tenant in there. The first thing you're thinking is, crap, how do I get rid of this investment? It's not producing for me. I'm not able to even pay the rent, pay the mortgage because I don't have a renter in there. When really the solution should be, or the mindset should be, if I had a good asset manager in there that's keeping a good tenant in there, raising the rents regularly, maintaining the property for me so it's not deteriorating.
Yep.
And that investment typically can be very good. And it comes down to good management.
Right on. You have a PMI in Palm Beach County? You have to.
We do, but we are looking for more. In fact, even at 450 franchise partners out there, we've got about 407 or 408 are open and operating, but we've got another 40 that are in the process of opening. Even with that many, Cliff, we still have most of our territories open and available because of this 5 pillar, you know, opportunity that we've created. We create our territories so they're based on very small populations. So we can put multiple franchise partners in a city or a town, knowing that, we might have one guy doing short-term rentals in
Mhm.
Palm County, and we might have another guy doing HOA management in Palm County, and we got one guy doing commercial and residential. And when they do happen to do the same pillar, it doesn't matter. One a third of our country is renting properties right now. And that's just touching on
Crazy.
residential pillar.
That's
Not
right.
even tapping into how many communities are now moving or being forced to move into HOA management and the commercial sector and the booming short-term rental stuff. So it's such a huge industry. We don't worry about stepping on each other's toes. It's more about how can we help these franchisees get a larger piece of the pie, because that
Right.
pie is so big.
That's right. Go back to the retention play. How get like top 3 strategies. How do you keep tenants? Like, how do you retain them?
Hey, property management is a people business. We got to keep our owners happy. We also got to keep these tenants happy. And it's tough because sometimes these properties that we manage, the investor doesn't want to invest in their property. They don't
Right.
want to replace that dishwasher, and that tenant's ticked off. He's been asking for a new dishwasher that works for 12 months. So when that lease comes up, you think he's going to want to stick around?
Yeah.
No way. And there's not much a good property manager can do about that if that investor is not willing to lean in and maintain the property. So as property managers, if we don't have a vested investor that cares about the property, we get rid of them. You got to keep that tenant happy. You got to provide them a good, clean property for them to live in. And like I touched on earlier, it's got to be maintained well. So you have a happy tenant, your churn is going to be much lower than what a lot of investors are seeing.
Absolutely. Do you agree with this statement? If you read the media will talk about how private equity firms are gobbling up all single family homes. But then there's a contrary statistic that says 90% of single family rental homes are owned by landlords with 1 to 5 properties.
We have some real big investors that we work with, but predominantly, Cliff, guys like you that own 5
Yeah.
investment properties. The guys that own 1 or 2, they're trying to manage them themselves. Remember, they haven't learned what or the value of a good property manager. But when you have 5, 6, 10 investment properties, you're past trying to manage those yourself typically, and you want a professional. And so
Right.
typically we're not seeing the onesie twosies, which is okay. We're seeing the guys with 5 to 10 properties, and then we have some big holding companies that we manage for. That's the unique thing about our brand. With 400 plus independently owned and operated franchises throughout the country, we're one of the only property management brands that can really say, if you're an investor that owns properties in multiple cities, we can provide you the same services, the same quality, using the same technology. So, Cliff, we're reporting to you as the owner your rent roll, your P&L every month, when the rents are collected, what repairs are needed, all in one technology for your property in Palm Beach, Park City, and Los Angeles. And there's not many brands that I can think of that have a national footprint like this, the ability
Right.
to service these investors at that level. And that's one of our biggest value props that we're creating as this brand grows, is we can be that one-stop solution for an investor that has investment properties throughout the United States. There is this movement out there where you've probably seen this, Cliff, where these PE funded groups are going out and acquiring property managers. Because remember, I started out with this fragmented business. Well, these big investors, these big PE groups see that fragmented industry and they think, hey, we can create a brand and we could just go out and buy up all these mom and pops. and talk those operators into owning them for us, and operating them for us a little bit, or we'll use some corporate staff. And what we're seeing is a big movement for these groups to go out and buy up property management companies. But we feel that the franchise model is the best solution for this consolidation because property management is a real tough business. Remember all these processes and systems
Right.
that I talked about? Property management used to be just collecting rent checks, but now, I mean, it's maintenance, it's leasing, it's accounting, it's legal work,
Right.
it's utility management, and the list goes on and on. That's why these mom and pops are getting killed because you can't be really good at all those things. You need a national brand. You need coaching, training, support, and systems, provided to you to really be able to touch on all those. And this concept of, just being that old school landlord is gone. And
Right.
these mom and pops are getting just destroyed. And AI is even making it even harder because if you're not plugged into, these things that AI is consolidating, it's just going to leave these small guys in the dust. But back to this national footprint concept, these guys are trying to go out there and buy, but they don't have that localized ownership component. And like I said, property management's a hard business. We deal with tenants crap, we deal with ticked off owners, and complaints and problems.
Yeah.
And if you're not invested in that business, if you're not getting the upside of that business, it's really easy for these property managers to just kind of do it half-heartedly. And
Right.
we feel by creating independently owned and operated localized businesses throughout the US, these guys care about their customers. That churn that you were asking about, our operators get far less churn than a typical property manager because we care, because we have those systems. And so we feel our model is the best model to really go out there, consolidate this property management, industry, professionalize it at a higher level. In fact, our vision, if you were to come into our corporate office here in Lehi, Utah, you'd see throughout our office our vision. It's very clear and really well known. We get our franchise partners on board with the same vision, and it is this. It is to become the world's premier property management brand. And we use the term premier on purpose because we feel this industry is lacking that professionalism. And by elevating all of our franchise partners to a premier level and operating at a premier level, we feel that we can help consolidate this industry and really help bring, what's needed to these investors out there.
Right. I like that.
Some of our operators, they don't want to be 500 doors, 1,000 doors under management. They just want 100, 200 doors and keep it a boutique size, real professional services. And we're fine with that. We're fine with that if that's the level that they want to build their business. But then we have operators that have thousands of doors and they're making millions of dollars in their business. And we run with them full throttle if that's where they're wanting to go. They want to do acquisitions. We have one franchise partner whose goal is to hit the $10 million mark in revenue per year within the next few years. And so, just real scale in what you can do in this business.
It has to be insanely profitable because you're bringing in revenue streams based on rent roll and of course all the ancillary services that you mentioned, which you mentioned like 50 revenue streams within these main pillars that you operate. Like the expenses can't be much more than labor,
You're
right?
you're pretty close. It's a little bit more complex than that, but to break it down, these small mom and pop shops, you were talking about, making 7% management fee on that rent amount. So if a property manager's collecting $1,000 rent, that property managers, if their management fee is 7%, they're keeping $70. We pull our own commission out first, and then we put the $930 into a trust account for that owner. And that's typically what these mom and pops are doing. They're just taking their 7%. Our franchise partners are upwards of 15 to 20. We even have some high performers. They're in the 30% of rent. Can you believe that difference from 7 to
Right.
30?
Right.
And that's what these systems, these processes, these programs that I touched on briefly earlier can provide. It makes an industry that has got the name of being dog eat dog and, highly competitive and low margins into something that's really a great business to be in. The scalable, you know, property, a franchise owner can buy multi units with us and operate in multiple cities. Once you've learned how to do this, it's not hard to duplicate.
Right. Right. Yes. I didn't hear numbers like 30% until I bought that property in Utah. And then speaking to some management companies, because it's so far away from me, I started to hear numbers like 30%. I was like, wow, those are some big numbers. That's impressive. Now
Which
I heard 20%
depends on
for
the
high frequency.
property. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Commercial property, you're not going to see those kind of returns, as a property manager. Short-term rentals, much even higher than that.
Right. Wow.
Or just your management fee for a short-term rental is 25 to 30% of the booking fee. And that doesn't even count all those additional revenues. You get a little markup on the cleaning and you get this and that. So, it can be quite profitable.
Interesting. I want to get into, let's get it. Can you just high level hit on not the 50 revenue streams, but Cliff, the money is made in these, I like to call them the vital few, right? Where are the vitals of the 50? It's like, Cliff, this is where the money is in the 50.
That is the secret sauce. We don't talk about it much.
Right.
That's the value that we create for our franchise partners. But hey, the management fee is the big one. And
Right.
just to touch on what we touched on earlier, a lot of these guys are just playing the lowest, who can charge the lowest, management fee
Right.
to get the deal.
Race to the bottom.
These are selling the value of the asset management that they're going to provide. And it's a whole different level of, this business where we're not competing for, the lowest management fee. We're actually introducing programs that are going to help that investor, improve his property and improve his investment. We're going to pitch to that investor what we're going to do for the tenants to make them happier and make them want to be a cleaner, better tenant. And we're not going to play the 7% management fee game. Yeah, our franchise partners are charging 10 to 12% for residential units. And people are paying it left and right because of the value that's being provided.
Yeah.
And then, we've got these, I'll mention the ones that I brought up, the lease up commissions. We work with realtors where, they'll give us referrals and we give them referral fees and we give them a part of the lease up commission. And if that realtor gives a PMI, an investor, they want us to manage their property, all of our franchise partners have a real estate license. And so these realtors oftentimes won't refer business to a property manager because they're worried that we're going to steal that investor. So any future
Right.
buys and sells, we're going to steal from them. But we have things like a professional alliance guarantee where when that realtor gives us a referral, we guarantee that when that property owner wants to sell or buy, it stays with that realtor. So we have lots of programs like this that pay the franchise partner, the property manager, pay them, management fees. We do markup maintenance, because we're brokering that maintenance process between the owner and the contractor. For example, if you need a new roof on your investment property, are you going to take the time to get 3 different bids on your property in Park City and you live in Florida? Probably it's going to be a hard thing to do. And how do you know those contractors are licensed and insured? And that's the job of a property manager. We can go out there, get those bids. Yeah, we're going to mark it up 5 to 10%, but it's worth it for our investment partners because they're getting the work done, the best vendor to do that, contractor to do it, and they have the assurance that property manager is going to see that process front to back through. And so maintenance markups, leasing commissions, management fees, things like this are the way these property managers make
Smart.
their money.
Smart. Love it.
To people that are inquiring about our franchise, we open up that book pretty well, and we showcase how we make the money and help them make the money and grow their business.
Right. I mean, I respect you being guarded. It's your brand. It's your proprietary information. It's your secret sauce. I'm not here to tell the world how to become a better property management company. If anyone listening wants every answer to every question, you'd have to engage with the brand. And Steve will open up his Komodo and share his and share everything he needs to share. One of the things to share would be the FDD, and I'd just like to talk about which I found very interesting, how you carved out certain KPIs, if you will. One of them was, well, what are the revenues per service? So you broke down in residential, and I'm only going to talk about the average, right? So there's average for everyone listening. There's the average and the median. On residential, it was $2,069, right? It sounds like per door.
Yeah, that's per door.
That's right, per door. And then on commercial, it was $1,282. And then that third pillar, if you will, it was 16, which was associations. It was 16,122. And you mentioned a minute ago, it's one of your fastest growing areas, right? It's like asking Jesse James, why do you rob trains? Because that's where the money is. Right?
Yeah.
Why are you going out? Right. That's where the money is.
Oh, yeah.
But short-term rentals was number 2 to associations, 12,384. Again, folks, per door.
Cliff, I'm impressed. You actually read through our FDD?
I do. That's why we asked for it. That's not an
easy task. I mean, our FDD, in my opinion, and I don't look at a lot of other companies' FDDs, but Cliff, sounds like you probably do. Our FDD is complex because of this 5-pillar model that we have. We have to differentiate the revenue, for our item 19, the difference between the guy just doing residential or commercial or short-term rentals. And it makes it super complicated. And then we've got these guys that are startup, and then we've got guys that have done acquisitions. And there's a huge difference in profitability between a guy that hasn't done an acquisition and is just growing his business in the slow organic growth model, or the guys that go out and buy, these acquisitions. And there's a huge difference. And so we want to disclose in our item 19, hey, here's the slow grow model. But if you really want to grow, 1/5 of our franchisees have done an acquisition to date, or more than one acquisition. And there's a huge, it's almost doubled, almost 3 times as profitable for these franchisees that have done these acquisitions. So
that was my takeaway. I love what I love what you just said, because the takeaway, it's like, look, in English, what was your takeaway? My takeaway was this: when we tell people follow the model, let me translate that statement into revenue opportunity. If you join PMI and you say, I understand what they do, but I prefer to grow organically versus acquisition, okay, here's the consequence of that. You will probably do 50% of the revenue of franchisees who enter their system and go through the acquisition process. Like that
we're doubling down on that, because we really want to attract owners, future franchise partners that have this acquisition mindset, so much that we will discount or we'll rebate back to a buyer of our franchise a large chunk of that initial franchise fee if they do an acquisition in the first 12 or 18 months. And so we're doubling down on that. We're even saying, hey, we want to work with guys that see that fast growth model, have the assets to be able to do it, or the credit to be able to get like a good loan for that. And we've got the acquisition department. We have guys here that find the property management companies for sale, help you value them, help you even acquire them, doing the LOIs and all that kind of stuff, because the average franchisee isn't a business buyer typically. And so we have professionals that help with this acquisition. And it's really what we're wanting. We're wanting to attract investors that want to own property management, but grow it, scale it much faster.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of being part of you. You have a department. Look, I've never done this before. How do I do it? No problem. We'll hold your hand through the whole acquisition
Plug right
process.
into the system. It's what franchising is all about,
That's right.
not having to do it all alone. And yeah, you pay a little bit of a royalty, but that royalty, I'm telling you, the amount of money our franchise partners save by being part of our franchise. I'm going to give you one example. The softwares that property managers use are not cheap. Like a property manager might pay $3 per door per month just for the one of the 5 to 10 software that they need to use. And we're being the largest brand in the United States. These software companies want PMI bad. We are their largest customer in many cases. And
Right.
so in a lot of these cases, we get access to these softwares just because of our size for a fraction of the price of retail. And we give that rebate back, or a chunk of that rebate back, to our franchisees. Our residential franchisees, Cliff, they pay no money for
Wow.
their residential software, and everyone else is
Wow.
paying $3 per door per month. I mean, that's almost the royalty right there.
Yeah.
And so we have so many ways of being part of this team that are going to pay you back that it nullifies, in my opinion, that royalty is nothing compared to what we're going to be able to provide that franchise partner through the partnership.
Yeah. Not enough founders say that on the show. And I'm the one, as the consultant coaching the buyer, saying, I don't care if the royalty is 6, 7, 8, 10%. What I care about is, am I getting 6, 7, 8, 10% of value back
Value
from the
back.
system?
To any of your listeners that are looking at buying into a franchise, that's what they need to be looking at.
That's right.
Not the price of the franchise, not the royalty, but what's the value prop that you're going to get back from that partnership.
Steve, this was great. We're coming up on time. What didn't we talk about?
Thanks for that question, because what we didn't talk about, and is probably the reason why I'm in business here today and why we're doing PMI. It's been 18 years. We started this in 2008. I say we because it's my partner and I. We're still privately owned and operated, and we have created a community of professionals. And we haven't talked about this community. And I don't know if you talk about this a lot on the show, but this is what's cool about the PMI brand, and I think franchising as a whole. These are, a lot of them are service businesses. It can be dog eat dog. As an entrepreneur doing a service business, you're out there day to day on your own, fighting the fight, trying to make money. And it's hard to do business on your own. I mean, take it from me. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life and failed more than succeeded in the past. And it's hard. Being an entrepreneur today is so hard. But what I found through franchising is you connect with the right brand, the right company, and you have a partner immediately, and coaches and trainers and people to support you from the corporate side. And then the side that's even cooler is these, in our brand, 450 others, entrepreneurs just like you that are all leaning in, all elevating the same brand, all wanting to become premier together and be as profitable and successful as possible. And they know they can't do it alone. So they lean in together and work together and help each other out. I just got back from a lunch trip in Northern Virginia earlier this week, and I met with 23 of our franchise partners there for just lunch. I was just there on business and took 23 of our partners out to lunch. And Cliff, it was so cool to see these guys together at that lunch table. I wasn't telling them, hey, network, help each other out. Just sitting there hearing how they're helping each other. They're passing leads back and forth, helping each other grow and succeed. And that's what I love about franchising, is that community that it creates and just that ability to help these entrepreneurs be more successful quicker and easier than doing it on their own.
I completely agree with that. I say it all the time. Collapse time, leverage collective intelligence, remove the obstacles, and just execute flawlessly and just win.
Nailed it. That's the recipe right there.
It is. I love, but you know what? In all fairness, not all leaders and CEOs are like you, Steve. A lot of them are not operating the way you're operating, which is one of the reasons why you have the size system that you have. You get it. A lot of franchisors, not just prospective franchisees, but a lot of franchisors should be listening to this episode because this is leadership. This is what building a franchise.
I always feel like, even though I've been doing this now for 18 years, I always feel like, I listen to these other CEOs and stuff, and I'm like, man, I wish I had those skills, and I wish I, could, do that. I'm always trying to hire people that are better. We're always looking to improve our operation and our brand. And so I appreciate that compliment. That's a big one.
I enjoyed having you on. Steve, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, man. And thanks for taking the time to be on the show.
You too. Take care.
Thank you for watching Pursuit of Profit, brought to you by Phrenosity. If you're exploring franchise ownership, don't guess your way through it. The wrong decision can cost you years and hundreds of thousands of dollars. At Phrenosity, we help you evaluate opportunities and build a clear strategy before you invest. And our services are completely free. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow for more. And if you're ready to get started, go to phrenosity.com and book a call. That's FRANOCITY.com.